I'd play hours and hours, just pretending in my head, doing little races, pretending I was the car at the back of the field and then going through.
There goes Alex Albon around the outside, and here goes Albon once again.
Yes, boys! Yes! Woo!
You want to be in a top team and you want to win races, you want to win a championship. Going into a top team, which requires a lot of experience against possibly the best driver, this is great. But at the same time, you understand, is this great?
Oh, that's Alex Albon, and he's gone into the barrier.
For somebody that was low in confidence already,
That's not going to help.
Or if you take a year away from Formula One, you're not coming back. Williams is a family. It felt like a real team that really wanted me to feel welcome.
Alex, awesome race, congratulations, awesome.
That feeling, the perfect way to get back into Formula One. I remember I was at Silverstone. I was going to my first Formula One race, and I remember hearing the sounds of the Formula One car as I came through into the circuit, and it was crazy. I knew that's what I wanted to do, of course, but it almost felt unreachable, almost like I just can't imagine that I can do that. When I first started, when I was 8 years old, it was my dad and myself. So my dad was my mechanic. He's your engineer, he's your driver coach, he's everything. That year when I turned 8 and I really got into my racing at the first time, I struggled. I was not in a position where I could, win races or back then there was 100 karts on track, and you had to be in the top 30 or 40 to qualify to the A final. So there was like a B final, a C final. Sometimes I was in the C final. For my final race of the year, I had a team, had more confidence, and when I did that race, I finished 6th, I think, in that race, and that was so much better than any other race that I did before. And then the next year, I became British champion, and it was just this kind of extreme rate of progression. Every year it felt more and more easy. Started to win more and more races. I was British champion, European champion, world champion. Started to race against Max, Pierre, Carlos, Charles, George, all these kind of guys. When I turned 15 to 16, that's when everything changed, and that's when the split pretty much happened, and that was where it was kind of like okay, what's going on? My family went through a lot of issues, so at that time, my mum had her problems, and financially as well as a family, we were completely broken. We had to sell the house, had to sell everything. We were, very lucky to be under my stepdad's family, and at that time, it was looking really bleak. I was having terrible races. It was my first year. I was finishing, very much towards the back of the grid, and my confidence as well just kind of really dropped off. It was kind of this very big high where, in karting I was building, and then I came into Formula 4 and it just dropped massively. It was the toughest year of my life at that time. When I ended that year, I knew, I knew Red Bull were going to drop me. I knew there was going to be an issue, and I knew, family-wise as well, we didn't have the money to continue. So I was in Barcelona. It was November time, and at that time it was Helmut Marko, which was in charge of the Red Bull Academy. He called me up and he was like, "Yeah, your results aren't good enough. That's it." And it was maybe a 1-minute phone call, which it normally is with him, and I expected it. I knew it was going to come. And at that point, from pretty much November time to March, it was really about, will anyone even consider me or take me, or how can I continue racing? What can you do? My first thought was just to go back to school, because at that time, you do leave school quite early when you're a racing driver. And I thought, I should go back to school really and just find a normal job, to be honest. I continued for another year, and it was really about regaining momentum again. When I was about 16, 17, that did things really start to pick up again. I was in Formula 2. I was racing George and Lando, and we were fighting it for the championship. At that time, them two were guaranteed to be in Formula 1 the year after. So George was going to Williams, Lando was going to McLaren. I was not considered at all the whole year. I did speak to Formula 1 teams if they had, if there were any opportunities, and all the doors were closed. I spoke to Helmut again, after all that time, and asked him how he was and said, what's the situation? He said, there's no space here. So I thought to myself, well, that's the way it is. I've got to find a job. I've got to make a career now. Formula 2, you don't make any money. I was torn at that time, and it was coming towards the final race of the season. I get a call from Helmut's PA, and he said, you want to do simulator work for Red Bull? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll do simulator work. I leave, and then the next day he calls me back again, and he's like, not just about the simulator work, but what's your, I'm thinking about something more than that. Have you driven a Formula 1 car before? And I was like, no. Do you have your super license points? Yes, I've got enough. He said, okay, I'll call you back. He called me, 3 hours later. He said, okay, yeah, let's do it. Okay, we're going to go live it was not even 2 days, it was 12 hours. And it was all over social media. And that was my way into Formula 1. So I had no practice, nothing. It was my first time in a Formula 1 car was the pre-season testing. Straight away when I got into a Formula 1 car, it felt really good. It felt like I knew I could do a good job. I had a really good 6 months with the team. Was in a really good place, really comfortable. I had a message just before going on holiday from Helmut to say, can you come to Graz, which is where he lives in Austria. I thought it was a bit strange, but not totally strange, and not strange for him. so I went across. It was like, I don't know, 5 minutes where he just gradually went, okay, so you're going to be in the main team now, and we've got the announcement in about 30 minutes. You want to be in a top team, and you want to win races. You want to win a championship. That's of course how every driver thinks. But you also are quite smart to it. If you think about the cards that I was dealt with, they weren't easy. It was 6 months in Toro Rosso with very little experience, in a good place, in a good car, going into a top team, which requires a lot of experience against possibly the best driver in a difficult car to drive. This is great. But at the same time, you understand, is this great? Of course, grab the opportunity, but it was a completely different environment that changed. Part of me was thinking, I know how good Pierre is. I know what he's done. So what's made it so difficult for him? And I didn't know at the time. So I had a 2-week summer break to think about it before actually driving the car. A lot of experience you need going into Formula 1 is controlling pressure, controlling media, being more experienced in them areas, being more experienced in politics, and learning how to play the game, basically. And so when I first started in 2020, and things weren't working out, I didn't have this kind of support group. I didn't really kind of getting thrown around everywhere, and felt like I was in this washing machine going around and around, and everything felt very negative. So you don't read it. At the end of the day, of course, I was never going to go on Twitter or Instagram because I just knew how negative it was out there. But you can't escape it. You're in the press conference, you're getting interviewed nonstop, and everything's negative being asked at you. So yeah, it is a vicious cycle. And of course, you're young at the time, and you don't really know how to deal with these kind of things. So when I look at it now, when I see where I am now, I still browse, I still look at what people say, but I'm in such a stronger position mentally, and you know, I have this network, and I feel much more in control of just my general surroundings. It's a pretty common rule that if you're not, or if you take a year away from Formula One, unless you're someone who's had a huge success, Fernando Alonso, Kimi Räikkönen, you're not coming back. It's kind of normal. When I got told, you know, that I wasn't going to be in the team next year, it was looking pretty bleak, because there was a chance of, okay, you know, what is there out there? There wasn't anything in any other F1 teams. You know, all the seats were gone. I had basically had a few days where I felt sorry for myself, and I felt like, oh, you know, this is it now. But then after them 3 days, it was pretty much like, what can I do to get back into Formula One? And it was almost like this pure fire of motivation, and I wanted to show people that, you know, they shouldn't discredit me or discount me in what I can do. What's really tricky about that is you're not able to drive a Formula One car, so you can't actually prove yourself to other people, because there's nothing to prove. You're not. It's not like football or anything. You can't play to show people what you can do. You're literally sitting on the sidelines. I worked really closely with this guys in the simulator work and the development work of the car and all that kind of stuff. And I spent pretty much January, February in a dark room, making sure that all them issues that I struggled with the car the year before were going to be fixed going into 2021. It was a strange year, you know. I was on the sidelines. I was watching the car win a lot of races, winning the championship, helping Max and Checo do that kind of thing. But at the same time, yeah, just it's not fun. So during my year away, I had a lot of time to think, a lot of time to do my job, but also a lot of time to focus on, very simply, how can I up my stock without even driving a car? That's actually something very hard to do. But then there was another side. It was like, I need people to realize, firstly, what I've done before, but also that the job I did the year before wasn't even that bad. I was taking legitimate statistics compared to people I've replaced and to people who have replaced me. I did it on Excel. So it was color coordinated slightly. So had red, yellow, greens. A lot of them were like lap time and statistics like race pace, qualifying, overtaking, la 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 la. When I gave Jos that piece of paper, that was in Austria. That was midway through the season. Jos was by far the most passionate, as in I could really tell how much he believed in me, wanted me, and straight away our conversations were positive. You know, George also mentioned a few comments about me. All in all, it felt like a real team that really wanted me to feel welcome. There were other teams as well. It wasn't just Williams, but Williams really stuck out to me. From the moment when George went to Mercedes, I think there was maybe a week of Red Bull and Williams lawyers doing their little thing, and my contract was signed. Williams is a family, and there was a feeling in the team as well. I think that they just felt like I would do a good job. Almost at the beginning, I was like, okay, let's see where we are first. But they were straight away on it, and very keen to listen to my feedback about my experience at Red Bull. I had a lot of this fire. I really wanted to show people, this is what I can do. I know I can do a good job. And I'd say there was a moment which really felt special, was the first qualifying of the year. So I knew at the time, it was a tricky start to the season. We weren't where we wanted to be. We were looking to be 19th and 20th in qualifying, but we qualified P15. I got into Q2, and that feeling, I can't explain it to you, but it was one of the most emotional in-laps I've done. I haven't told anyone actually this, but I got into Q2 and it felt like, you know, everyone was happy. I was happy, of course. The team were happy. And all that, you know, all that year, all that feeling, all that emotion kind of felt like, wow, you know, that was like my God, you know, that's just the perfect way to get back into Formula One.